Okay. So we call the meeting to order at 10:05.
Thank you. We have 3 discussion items to start with. The whistleblower policy update. I'm going to ask Mark if he'll speak to that as he's been working, he's been leading that process.
So in board docs, there is a policy sample that David Lindsay put together for us. It's pretty self-explanatory as far as the policy is concerned. If the committee members would want to review it, give any input or thoughts to it, I can then communicate those with David Lindsay if there's any changes that need to be made. I did briefly talk to David Dietrich about it yesterday in board leadership. Because I think a big component of this will be a website where folks can go, sort of a one-stop shop, so to speak. If folks have policy type issues or questions on some of these more specifically, there'll be a location on the district's webpage where they can go and get that information. But this is the policy that David had put together based on the previous conversations that we've had as a committee. So I don't know if you want to take some time to review and let me know then over the next week or so of any changes, questions, additions, subtractions, whatever, that I can communicate that with David Lindsay as well and make those necessary adjustments.
Thank you so much, Mark. If I may just jump in super quick. I read this. I'm really impressed with it as a first draft. I had a quick question. What school district did this come from? And did anyone get a chance yet to actually speak with that school district to see like when they started it, the problems they're having, the benefits? Any feedback would be so helpful.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the school district that we had the initial policy from. And honestly, the only person I know that David Lindsay spoke to was another school solicitor, Scott Edders out of Center County, that he communicated about this policy with. Outside of that conversation, I'm not aware of any other conversations that David did or didn't have. So I don't know if he reached out to that school district or not in compiling this particular policy. Before the meeting's over here, though, Liz, I'll get you the name of that school district where the initial policy came from. I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, don't kill yourself over it. But it would be really helpful because, to be honest with you, I would feel much more comfortable if it's Mark or Dr. Martin or whoever you decide actually reached out to that particular school district to get some feedback. I would really like that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, that's my feeling about it. What do you think, Tracy?
I think if David Lindsay did this policy, he's pretty good with it. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me. I think, I think we're good with what we have here. We'll look at it. I don't know if we need to really follow up with another district.
Scott Etter actually represents multiple districts in Center County. So it could be one of many, but I mean, it wouldn't be difficult for us to follow up with the school district and ask them that. So we can continue working on it and bring it back again next month.
I mean, I would feel comfortable with that, just so everyone, I mean, me personally, I know the other question I had was, I'm sort of assuming after I read it, is that you would have to log in. This is only for employees, period, right?
The policy itself, yes, would cover school district personnel.
But I mean, is the vision that, let's say, the employee, it's a non-union issue, whatever, it's outside of that realm, but they wanted to report something.
Can you give an example?
I'm sorry, what, hon? What?
Could you give an example?
Oh, okay.
You're on mute. We can't hear you.
froze up.
Oh,
You're
there you are.
frozen.
You're back.
Oh, okay. Okay, so myself as an employee, that I would have to first log into the apps to access that. So in other words, it would be a closed format. So someone from, the public or a student or someone couldn't be messing with it, right? Is that sort of the vision?
Messing with the policy?
No, if they go onto a link of an eventual link to report something, that they would have to personally log in. It's a closed system that would only be accessed by employees. Is that sort of the vision?
Honestly, I can't say that we've got to that point yet in terms
Okay.
of what that report would look like. I mean, generally speaking, the reports that we receive now are written, paper format, obviously, but we could certainly look at an electronic version of some sort. And I would say, yes, it would have to be confidential in that sense.
Okay, right. So just Tom, Dick, and Harry can't off the street access it. You'd have to log into the form.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that depending on the circumstances, the legal ramifications surrounding it, it could be subject to right to know as well. But that would be very circumstantial as far as whatever the report was or whatever the nature of the information was. It could fall under the right to know laws as well. So, I mean, in theory, it could be accessed by the public depending on the circumstances. But again, without knowing the specifics, it's hard to really say one way or another at this point.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll find out. Jeff, you got, what you got, Jeff?
Yeah, I didn't hear your example when your audio cut out.
Oh, it was just
What would
silly.
it? Well, I'm curious as to if it's a non-issue or union issue, or what would they be reporting? What would be an example?
Well, I don't know. That's why I think contacting the school district that this came from to see, has it been successful? What are their challenges? I think getting that sort of feedback, I mean, I would feel more comfortable. Like I said, I don't like reinventing the wheel. So that's why I think the feedback from whatever school district this is would be so helpful.
Are you thinking that people would be able to make anonymous complaints?
No, that's why I'm thinking if it's digital, they'd have to log in. I don't know. That's why I think.
So I think it's important to remember that this whistleblower policy is really a compilation of other policies that we have and other ways for people to already do these things. What we heard was this is just it's making it easier for people to find things, to follow the complaint process. I don't think it changes anything in a sense. All of the things that would be in this policy can actually be done now. It's just how they're being done. So we'll check in with them. We'll check in further with those other districts.
And the district that I had initially looked at is Neshannock Township School District.
Neshannock,
No, not Neshaminy, Neshannock,
Neshannock.
Neshannock.
I don't think Scott Etter represents them, but
I think they're outside of Philly area, if
yeah.
memory serves me correct, but
Where-
that's the name of the initial policy that I had sent to David Lindsay.
Great. Well, thank you.
Where will these complaints go once they make them?
Again, I think it would be dependent upon the nature of the complaint. If it's more of a sexual harassment type issue, then obviously if it's an employee issue, it would come to me. If it's a financial impropriety type issue, then I would say more along the lines of the business side of things, and Joni and Jackie would get those types of issues. I think though it's going to be subject to or dependent upon the nature of the complaint itself.
But it would go to whatever specific department or administrator or whoever would be in that, handle that.
Right.
That particular type of issue.
Yeah, and in my mind, quite honestly, all your initial complaints now, depending again on the severity and nature of the complaint, it could go to your building administrator, their immediate supervisor first, and you'd work through that process.
Right, and that's the way it's supposed to work, through the chain of command.
Right. Right, which again, I think as Jackie just mentioned, I don't know that this policy changes those processes, procedures at all. It just sort of encapsulates all of those things into one
Mhm.
general whistleblower policy that says that, folks can make a good faith report on whatever items they want to make a report on. It can be of varying natures, degrees, whatever. And whatever those reports are, depending on the topic, again, they refer back to whatever policy would cover that specific complaint. Again, a sexual assault, sexual harassment type complaint is vastly different than a fraud complaint.
It's really a looping policy. It's one policy that says if this policy didn't follow the complaint process, if that doesn't follow this policy, refer to this policy, refer to that policy. And that's why I think what David Lindsay said originally, if you want him to draft a policy, he'll draft a policy, but the necessity is.
And I think too, at least my understanding, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Dietrich, but my understanding of his concern was for people to have a less confusing process by which to
Yes.
level a complaint.
Yes,
Or
that's what
concern.
I took as, and I think that David Lindsay, as well as myself, Mark, thought that your idea of maybe even a web page, one dedicated, for employees to have all those things easy to find, easy to access when they do have a problem or concern, that they would know what to do
Right.
or where to go. So, I mean, the policy is there's no harm in having the policy. I don't think it changes anything. I think the change to benefit employees would be a one-stop place
Sure.
to go to.
Mhm.
Which I think ultimately that will be part of this whole process,
Yeah,
that we'll have something like that to where faculty, staff would have, access to go to, where all this information is in one area, and we could do something for the public as well that would have the same concept
yeah, there's,
surrounding it.
Great. Well, this is really encouraging. Thank you so much for taking on another layer of responsibility. But Tracy, any other additional comments? Jeff, please speak up.
I'm good.
Good.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll close that conversation until next time. And B2 naming policy rights update. This is what I have. First of all, I was extremely challenged. This is not an excuse, but my printer is finally working. Okay, I've had it now for 2 weeks. The bottom line, I have not started to rewrite a draft, but this is one thing I needed from you folks, is one of those 3 policies that I originally shared with you had advertising and naming rights in the same policy, which after I reviewed all of them, I mean, I saw an advantage to that. But on the flip side of the coin, before I go ahead and do this, I want to get some feedback from everybody. Advertising separate, naming rights separate policy, or just put it all in one policy as another school district already has done.
is there any other existing policy that addresses the advertising piece?
Yes, the 3 school districts that I looked into that, well, I'm sorry. I don't take that credit. No. PSBA sent us some really great examples. And of those examples, I went on their board docs. Some of them had advertising as a separate policy and naming rights as a separate policy.
Yeah,
And some of them had both of the text in the same document, and it was called naming rights and advertising.
gotcha. From my perspective, my initial reaction would be, I feel like there's 2 separate things. I mean, in some cases, they could be one thing, right? But in most cases, if you're naming right, that's a one-time thing you're naming potentially, or for a specified period of time. But if you're advertising, that seems to me it could fall under a different policy.
Okay.
But would you think when the school districts that you looked at had it in 2 separate policies, Elizabeth, was the advertising under 600 finances or 700 property?
700s. Mhm.
Still in the 700s.
Yep.
I don't, I see them as 2 different things. Joni's not here, but I think she, as a business manager, should probably weigh in on that and those procedures, because I think What I don't know right this second would be about the auditing, because I think a lot of it would, you almost have to work backwards to say, if we were to take money from people for advertising, what is it that the auditors are going to expect or look for to make sure that our policy and our procedures to follow the policy would be aligned with the auditing procedures in the end?
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's just my initial thoughts. I don't know what the rest of you think, but that would be my initial reaction to that.
Were the two separate policies both 700s?
Yes. I think it was 703, 704, but don't quote me on that. It's in the email, the original email. Yeah, they're both 700s. And that was my, while you're thinking about that, my other question was, I was going to go ahead as a draft, write in about the Keystone Foundation, because some of the policies didn't say anything about where the money goes. And some of them did. So that can always be deleted, but that's sort of what I was thinking, that's already written into the policy, that the district doesn't take the money directly. It goes through the foundation, but if it does, they're gonna keep 3%, which,
They're doing the
So-
work.
right. So I mean, that's sort of where so it's just one-stop shop. But again, it's gonna be a draft and you can comment at that time, but that's sort of where I was going with it. And I definitely will have it for you for May for a review 2 weeks beforehand. I really will.
Elizabeth, do you think that the dedications, like we have a policy on dedication 702.1. Do you think that the dedications and naming rights policies are most closely aligned?
Yes and no. Those school districts, again, it's up to you guys and the board, and they had their separate dedications, were completely separate. They didn't tie them with anything else because there was no money transferred. When they had money being transferred, though, they were in separate policies, or they grouped them together in that one policy. So that's the one thing I did notice, is that when money was exchanged, of course, I only looked at 5 districts. So I mean, that's just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm saying, when money's exchanged, they were in those policies, and when verbal dedications, that was completely separate.
Well, if you want me, I'd be interested in looking at the advertising one. If you email me when you have a chance what the sample is, and I can look it up, or email me the PDF, whatever is best for you.
Mhm.
Be interested in seeing what the differences are, and I could give you
Sure, that'd be helpful.
a better sense of it when I have something to look at.
That would be really helpful. In fact, I know you love to golf and you go to the country club over here. That sign they installed with the advertising when you're walking towards the clubhouse,
Mhm.
wow. That's all I can say. But if you ever go there, take a peek. It's beautifully done. But
Yeah.
anyways, is there any other comments on this, or should we move on?
So you'll send, just I want to summarize, you'll send me something to look at.
Yeah,
Or and maybe just send it to all of us. I mean, it doesn't have to be just me, could be everybody.
Sure.
And then we can give better direction.
Mhm.
I think that I don't know, I'm kind of thinking about, we don't have to have, I mean, it's not necessary to have a policy in order to do advertising, as long as we're following the procedures that aren't going to get us in trouble with auditing. But if we have, you know what I mean? We can still advertise, we can still do things, because I feel like there's something in one of this, our 600s that really speaks to that already. But
I think so.
Well, the difference was when you look at when I emailed, and please, I have 2 events this weekend, so I am smashed, but I will next week, I promise. Okay. One thing I really did like about their advertising policies, when you see it, is they have very clear cut things that they accept. It goes to a committee as far as the size, the colors, the materials. So, which that, the consistency level was really great. It's not just like, well, this person likes this. It was really, well, you'll see. And then I look forward to comments.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions, please, or comments, and we'll move on?
So if you're saying, like, if say UPMC or somebody wants to do something in way of advertising. Like
Mhm.
we had talked about before, maybe doing something on the turf, or you're talking any type of advertising like that. Or signs or digital stuff or, um,
Yes, anytime that there's, it goes out into the school district, mostly what, I think what they were highlighting more was so they would have consistency and control over like what they put a sign on the chain link fences, you know, or if they did a menagerie of signs together like they did at the country club. When you see that consistency, it really is it's attractive. It doesn't look like mom and, that's derogatory, but it really looked professional, but not pretentious. So I guess that's sort of where the policy sort of guides you to that sort of level. I think that was the intent, but
I think it's a good idea if we're gonna go down that road, that we have something that keep it, have guidelines to it and know exactly what's acceptable and what isn't. So I'd be curious to look at that.
okay, super terrific. Moving forward, thank you very much. C1, my dog, policy 202. It says it's mandatory, so I'm assuming administration, Mark, that this is something we need to update ASAP or something.
If we could pause, Elizabeth, there's a B3.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Ah, yes, the funny farm. Okay, I'm so sorry. Yes. B3, David is unavailable today, but he did have a comment and I'm sure just sharing. One thing that other school districts have, some, not all, they have, before the superintendent's report, they have what's called the board president report. And that is a line item in their agenda. And right now, because, we're so up in the air about whether there's going to be a student representative or 2 student representatives. I'm not even going to go with that other, but I thought that was really important for consideration. That would be an easy review, easy change at this point. So I saw value in that and I was wondering what the feedback that was. I'm just sharing. Any feedback?
Yeah, we had talked about this before. One, that we had agreed that any of the 0 policies would be discussed at the board retreat so that the full board could have input in them. And also, when it comes to the president's report, we also had discussed that to make sure that it was something that the full board agreed to be reported. So that someone present or future presidents cannot just go off and make statements that the full board or the majority of the board does not agree with. So that's why I thought we talked about or had mentioned that this should be done at a retreat, board retreat, discussed with the full board.
No, that's good. Very good. No, absolutely, Tracy. That's why at least it's on our radar that, and it would be similar. I think David's idea, of course, I'm not speaking for David. The idea is like the superintendent's report. It's very specific, very linear, and that it just would follow that same format. However, that gets worded. Basically it's the same thing. Okay, any other comments on that? It's just putting it on the radar.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think, but we should hold that so everybody can have input on it. Whenever we get to have the retreat, whenever that is.
Absolutely. Okay. Moving on to C1. Mark or Dr. Martin or?
This is me.
Okay.
We talked about this briefly last time. There were some choices in there. Tried to get some input from the folks on the committee. since that last meeting, Christina Manning, who deals with under her role as Director of Pupil Services, admissions and things fall, to her delegation of responsibility. And so she and I had an opportunity to sit down, and we really liked a lot of the things that were in our current policy. They work for us. They were reasonable to families. They were respectful to families. And so what you see here is a document that, obviously was a draft from PSBA, but it
Mhm.
very much mirrors the document that the policy that we've had in place. We haven't seen any major issues with the policy. It's very functional. It allows us to work with families. It gives exceptions where exceptions are needed. And so if you don't have any, major concerns with this, we believe it's ready to go to the full board.
Comments, Tracy, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good with it.
I think it looks fine.
Okay, thank you very much. The only question I had was, when it comes to the transportation part, it says the school district is not responsible to transport the child. I just don't understand that when we transport everybody else. What's the benefit or please explain it so I understand. Or we understand.
So we would be saying, and I think the part that you're referring to is in bold under former residents. So if a child were to, let's say, senior year, student moves to State College or Tyrone, let's go Tyrone. Student moves to Tyrone, but they don't want to transfer to Tyrone. They have 2 months left of school. The student has a driver's license or the parent works here, whatever. We would not want the district to be financially responsible for sending a van or a bus to Tyrone to pick up a student who is electing to finish their school year here, because their residency would not be here. And we would also be foregoing any reimbursement for that child. So therefore, any type of transportation provided to a non-resident would not be subject to reimbursement from the state. So we would be expending dollars unnecessarily, or out of the kindness of the district's heart and the kindness of all the taxpayers to pay transportation for a student. And it doesn't make any sense. It's always worked. When we don't provide transportation, they seem to find other arrangements to make things work.
Good.
And I don't think it's fiscally responsible to put that on the school district.
Well put. I appreciate that. I mean, I didn't know legally if we had to or not, but I mean, me personally, I don't want to see it changed, but I just wanted to understand it better. And that was really helpful. Jeff, Tracy, any other further comments? You want to take it to first read?
Sure.
Yeah.
I should have made, I'm sorry, I should have made one other note, Christina. What we noticed is there's a lot of instability with kiddos these days, and homelessness is much more prevalent, maybe, or even more known. And so this policy addresses and relates and is now coordinated with the homeless policy as well.
Good.
What's that? Can you,
Yeah, it just coordinates with the law because we have to provide them transportation if they're homeless.
Good. That makes sense. Good, fair. Okay, any other comments? Should we move on?
Christine, how many homeless students do we currently have, or, maybe an average number for this year?
I think from start to finish, so they're deemed homeless for the entire school year, even though they may find stable housing. We're, I believe, up to like close to 50
Oh, my God.
now within the district.
And is that number higher than when you first started in this role 3.5 years ago?
Well, when I first started, they really weren't classifying. It was a big struggle to classify students homeless. And really, as long as there's an incident that has occurred that has created an unstable environment for them, where they lay their head at night, they're classified homeless by law. So yeah, but the year before I came, there was 13. And we've consistently had anywhere from 35 to 57.
So I think it's also important to note that the definition of homeless isn't just somebody living in a cardboard box. They just are not in their they're in their home. they may be with somebody else or,
If they're doubled up, and we have a lot of families that double up, so for one reason or another, they get evicted from their apartment, or there's a fire or anything that could happen, and they live with another family and that's not their permanent resident.
yeah.
Then they're considered double up and they're considered homeless.
So I just wanted to call that to your attention because this policy is important in our everyday operations and it's we do have a lot of supports in place because of Christina's role in working with those folks and then connecting them to services through the social worker, through the school counselors and making those connections. I think is helpful to connect them to the resources. We have backpacks that are filled with, personal hygiene items and some things that they need. We have several closets and ways to get them clothing and some funds set aside to make sure that their basic needs are being met and that they can get to school. So I just wanted to point that out to you while we were talking about that.
I would just like to make a personal comment, please. However administration and the other board members feel about this, but that was very real information. And me personally, I would like to hear that at the public work session when this is discussed. It's extremely important that the world, our local representatives, everyone hears this information. I mean, that's how I personally feel about it. So any feedback, Tracy or Jeff, on that request?
Well, I don't know. Tracy, what do you think?
I don't know. We're just discussing the policy, not exactly what any actions we're taking right now with our homeless population. I don't know. I think it's a little bit personal to our students and families who are going through it. And I don't know
Okay.
how they would feel about, all the attention being called to it. Not that we'd be naming names, obviously. But I mean, if we were discussing something, an action by the administration or the board to support homeless people or homeless students, then maybe numbers would be okay. But until then, I'm not so sure about that.
My
Yeah,
point, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that I don't think that that's something that we need to draw a lot of attention to. I mean, we have a policy for it and we deal with those students and we help them in the best we can, but I don't know that we need to, publicize how many we have in that, because it could be embarrassing for people, especially those people out there that know folks that are in that situation. So I don't know. I just think it might be a little more than we need to say on it.
I wanted to share it with you just because policies sometimes can be so dry, looking, words on a page and laws and everything. But I just wanted you to maybe have a little context in how your work with policies helps us on a daily basis deal with, things to support our students. And so I didn't, that was my intent, was just to let you know how impactful the policy work can be to everyday operations.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for your comments. Super terrific. The next one, it looks like we just have updates for the 204, the things that are bold. Is there any comments or anything that, Dr. Martin or anyone would like to say? Or
The instability stuff with the changes in law are applied to this policy. There's not a whole lot of difference to how we've been operating.
Mhm. Any other questions, comments?
No.
Okay, well, sorry, what? Oh,
No.
We're good. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay, super terrific. Thank you for bringing that up and putting it on the this agenda. The next one, graduation. There always seems to be something with graduation. What updates do we need to? I mean, obviously we see the bold,
I think it's just annual reporting requirements. And again, you see the students experience educational instability listed there as well. There really isn't a whole lot of anything new here, but we are required to report graduation data to the state. It's part of our PIMS reporting. And so now it's just in policy. So it just aligns us. No major changes to how we're actually functioning.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other comments or concerns? Questions?
It's good.
Okay, super terrific. 237. Oh, I've been waiting for this one.
Well,
Electronic devices.
Well, Megan actually just stepped out of the room, but Megan, I believe it was last week, had an opportunity, I believe, to meet with the secondary principals to go over this policy. And I have not yet, with the days off in there, have not had a chance to go over that with her yet. So I have not seen the updated and the input from the principals, and I would hesitate to bring something here that if I haven't seen their input. And so we had planned on having it done, but it unfortunately did not get completed in time, which is why there's no attachment. So I would ask if we could table 237 until next month.
Absolutely. This is critically important. So even if it takes 2 months to make it, spot on, I'm all for that. Okay, Jeff and Tracy,
Yep, that's
we're just
fine.
gonna table it till next month.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that there's other things that will impact this process or this policy anyway, or potentially could have a bearing on it. So depending on what direction we go with some things. So.
Okay, super terrific. And I just would like to share a personal story real quick. I'll be super quick. One of the meetings, I was very emotionally upset at one of the public meetings, and bless his heart, Rick asked me out for a drink and we talked, and it was serendipitous. I ran into a man who used to work at Jersey Shore School District, and we talked about cell phones. And when he was working there, I'll just give you a brief overview. Okay, this is just one school district, mind you. They first, no cell phones. Well, that was an absolute catastrophe, he said. That's his opinion. Then they went to red zone, green zone, yellow zone. Green, you can use it anywhere, do anything. Yellow, it's okay if the teacher approves it, for research. And then, of course, red is absolutely. And when they first did it, they took away the phones, and then the student picked it up at the end of the school day. But he said they really didn't have an impact until they got rid of green altogether. So now they only have red and yellow zones in the school. And now the student cannot pick up the phone after school. It has to remain locked up and picked up the following day by the guardian or parent. And he said, once they did that, it was a game changer. So just want to put a bug in your ear. It was a conversation off the cuff. I don't even know if they're still doing it, but I did check. They now only have red zones and yellow zones in their school. No green, 0. Okay. Thank you so much. Looking forward to that. Policy 239. One of my favorite topics personally, foreign exchange students. Please brief us.
No changes to this policy from the previous time it was approved in 2016. There's no updates from PSBA, so we just suggest a review only and move it forward for formal review.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Hopefully this program can be up and running as soon as things calm down.
It's been up and running.
Well-
There's no changes.
Right.
Although Mark did inform me yesterday that the foreign exchange student that was board approved fell through with that student, but there's another request coming forward this month. So there's no changes to operations or policy from our point of view. We would just like to have, if part of the cyclical review, show that it was reviewed and addressed in 2023.
Okay, thank you so much. It's always a great thing when this happens. Following that, if there's any other comments, we'll just move on to policy 247. We have some just items in bold. Is there any updates that we should bring our eyes to?
Christina's, if you could just use the mic, please, close to it.
No, it just, well, the one big change is just to make sure that we're following through with a threat assessment.
Okay.
So that's it.
That's already been happening in reality when reported, so.
Okay, all right, well, thank you so much. Any other comments or questions?
Nope.
It's very important, yes, let's please, we're all due first reads. Unless we don't want to, but let's put it on first read, please. 248, unlawful harassment. Again, you'll see there's just a few things that are in bold, but is there anything else that the board should know about besides the bold items, or?
Nope.
Okay, so you're all happy with this? Any questions or concerns?
Should the board also approve the attachment? Is that the report form?
That's what I'm opening now.
Yeah, I'm
It's
trying to
it's
open it
the
too.
Form that we already use, it would be part of the AR, so they don't have to approve.
Okay,
the
so
AR.
just move the policy, not the form, but you can see the, where the.
Mhm. Well, I can
form.
open it. Hopefully the others can open it. It's just a Word doc.
Mhm.
Okay, so first read, just the policy 248. And not the, it's just the Word doc form for administration to utilize. So thank you so much for updating these. Very important, very important. Student recruitment, 250. I am not aware of, I never knew we had this one. My fault.
Again, we don't have any suggested changes for this. Was last approved by the board in 2016, so it's just a cyclical review.
Okay. Any questions or concerns? Do you want to just update it just because even with no changes, just to show that we've reviewed it? Is that?
Yeah, it would be a
Okay.
review. So what would show was reviewed 2023.
Okay. Okay. Christine, I'm kind of this is a sad one. Policy 251. Is there any?
No, this just, it coordinates with the homeless laws and the Act 1 changes for instability of students and providing them a consistent graduation path and working with them if they've moved from one school to the next to make sure that we can get them their diploma. So
Okay.
the rest of this, it's all stuff that we're already doing because we have to do this per the homeless regulations and the foster regulations.
Yeah, sad, but very important. Is there any other comments, questions, or concerns?
The only comment I have is clerical. I'm just now noticing there, for some reason, there's an extra white page in there. If Patty or Tracy, if you could just eliminate the extra blank page for cleanliness before we move it over to the board meeting.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Yeah. That just. Okay. Just out of curiosity, is it true that they might increase the age from 21 to 23? Has anyone heard that?
I hope not.
For what?
How long some students can stay in school?
I have not heard that.
Okay, all right, it's just grapevine stuff. Doesn't matter. Don't pay any attention. Okay. Thank you. We'll move that to first read. Okay. Okay. 252, dating violence.
The only change here too is just to make sure that we follow through with the threat assessment if necessary.
Okay. Any questions or concerns? And then, of course, you have your Word doc, the report form. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's the end of the policies. Is there any other comments or concerns, or something you want to look forward to for next month, or something that we should? I mean, I am going to be working on that one, sending Dr. Martin the links to those other policies from the other schools, but is there anything else that? Okay.
We have a few more 200s to clean up. So we're just going to continue working through that part of the policy manual, and we'll follow up with any notes from, you know, anything from earlier today. And we'll see you again for policy on May 10th.
May 10th. And then, before we close, I just had a question. May 10th is policy, or I have the wrong date set? Oh, thank you, Dr. Martin. Yeah, I had 17.
Jackie's fine.
Maybe some feedback if time allows next month at the policy committee. You know, if the conversation does come up with the principals and the clubs, I mean, you know, what interest or non-interest, or, you know, I mean, obviously we're talking about autumn school year, but as far as having a student representative for the students on the school board, not a school board member, but just to give a, you know, a monthly report, any feedback, because then the policy would have to obviously, you know, reflect whatever it is that we decide to do about that.
Yeah, I've been meeting with students. I've also met with the secondary principals already, so I'm already working towards that. I'll provide an update when I have it ready.
That would be super terrific. We're all excited about it.
It's the student government policy. And I also have a meeting with some students next week to kind of review the administrative regulations. So I've been working with those secondary principals on the student government policy. And then the policy itself really doesn't need a lot of changes, but we went over the ARs in depth because that's where, you know, the other piece comes into play. And I'm somewhat, I guess, a little bit unclear on how we're moving forward, because when the policy committee met last month, we discussed students being on the school board as a non-voting member. And we also talked about students providing updates.
Mhm.
And it was my understanding at that time that we talked about not having a student on the school board as a non-voting member, but moving towards student updates, starting small with that.
Right.
And then potentially looking in the out years at the other options. And so what we've, you know, that's where I've started to work. And I know that there was one of the public comments, someone suggested having a student on the school board. And so I haven't been given any other direction to look at moving in that direction. But it's my understanding from the board that from this committee that my work is supposed to be focused on the student update piece, getting the student government up and running the way the policy, you know, says. But, you know, it's what the kids have been saying is that, and in talking with them and talking with the secondary principals about what the kids have said, they said that they're not meeting like a student government. They're not really following parliamentary procedures and things of that nature to have really a student government in the way that's intended. Although they have advisory groups and they have been planning events, but the events kind of morphed from the student government wanted more events, or, you know, they wanted more fun things. So then they started planning events, and then it kind of morphed into that and away from the original intent of a democratic procedures.
Sure.
So it's really about tightening it back up. And I've talked to the principals about finding the right advisors in their buildings, because that advisor is going to be crucial to the success of the structure
Right.
of the organization. But
Mhm.
so can I just ask for clarification as the superintendent? Like I wasn't planning on moving to a policy right now that included a student on the board. That was a public comment, but that was not the conversation from this committee.
Jeff, if I may just jump in. No, you're absolutely correct, Dr. Martin. And also I think the public, you know, because they'll understand eventually, but the fact that this won't be a adjunct. I mean, I never felt it that way in the conversations that I've heard, that this is just like the superintendent has a report. Hopefully the board president will have a report, and the student council will have a report, or any concerns or things like that, but vetted, of course, with all the administration. So that's what I personally thought. What did you think, Jeff?
Well, a couple comments about that. I think, first of all, I think Jackie's right that they need to get their student government. Right now, they aren't functioning as a student government body as such. And I think before we start having them make reports to the board and so on,
Oh, yeah.
that should be up and functioning in the way that it should. And I don't see that happening before next year
That's
at the
weird.
earliest. So,
Mhm.
and if, you know, if this topic, it could possibly even be another one for a board retreat item where you could, you know, discuss the feelings of the board, you know. I don't know. I've never been a big fan of having the students sit up there at the board table or whatever, like some boards do. If they want to make a report on a monthly basis, that's fine. The president of their student government or whoever the rep is going to be. But, you know, that's just me. That's, you know, and I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think that we need to kind of look at that a little further. And once they get their organization going and get it up and running, then next year, maybe we can start doing something along those lines at that point.
Mhm.
It may all align nicely if we look at the meeting policy in the summertime or whenever, I don't know when any retreat is scheduled, but it would be nice to let me work with the principals and the kids to get this formalized a little more. We've talked about some visits to some schools. State College and Kerwinsville have been working together on their student government thing. And so we've kind of have some contacts, Nick and I, at both of those places. And so we've been talking about potentially even a site visit or a Zoom meeting with the other student government and our students to talk about the structure and how things are working. And again, I've already mentioned about the advisors. So at this point, it would be great if we could kind of get that all going and shoot for at least student reports in the fall.
Mhm.
But I also feel that I would have absolutely no problem if we have it organized to how the students who are speaking on behalf of the student body are absolutely speaking on behalf of the student body and not with an individual concern or not with hearsay or not with,
Mhm.
shock value of some kind, that, they're actually understanding their role. I would absolutely share my superintendent report time with the students. So our goal when we talked last time was to try to get some things formalized and in place so that next fall we could start with some student reports.
You know,
Oh, this
that's
is
exactly
exciting.
where,
Oh, go ahead.
That's-
Sorry, Jeff.
that's exactly where I was coming from. You
Mhm.
summarized it perfectly. And I think that would be a good path to follow here for the next few months and you're right, the advisor is the key. Somebody that is well organized and the kids like to work with and respect. And I think that's a very important piece to that. So I'm sure that the principals have some faculty members that they have in mind that would fit that role well. So.
That was exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the clarification. I feel like I have a clear direction.
Good, good, good. Okay, any other comments, concerns, or we can just go back and then move on with our day?
That's all I've got.
All right. Super terrific. Thank you all so much for your hard work on this. We really are. We are so far advanced than we were 5 years ago. Anyways, thank you all. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you Thursday.
All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye.